Battlestar Galactica is over, but we have to go fracking down the hatch to talk about Season 3, Episode 18 of Battlestar Galactica here on RHAP. We know scripted TV. We know that the sun also rises, and so does the Jinn. I don't want to exclude the Jinn from the rising situation. I'm Josh Wigler. I'm joined here by the man who is always rising. It's Mike Bloom.
And that's not just talking about my member.
Yeah. Members only here on Down the Hatch, Mike Bloom.
Jin is rising, much like the Jin probably in poor Bill Adama's glass as he mourns the fact that he may have lost his son to the dark side of the law.
To the dark side of the law. Or, I don't know, just like the law. Like, relax, man. It's the law. It's fine. It's whatever. Mike Bloom, very excited to be talking to you about the penultimate installment of Season 3, at least here on Down the Hatch. The finale, Crossroads, a two-parter. I'll meet you there with Bone Thugs and Harmony. Great call sign for
now, would that be three
right?
different pilots, or would it be one pilot called Bone Thugs and Harmony?
I think it would be Bone Thugs and Harmony. So I think two.
How about Bone
two.
Thugs, Harm, and Unny?
How about Bone? That's one. Thugs? That's two. And that's three. Harmony? That's four.
I mean, and is both the best and worst call sign, because think about all of the Abbott and Costello routines you could get into with like, all right, you, and steps forward like, all right, I guess I'm going on the mission.
Spoiler alert for you, Mike. Bone, Thugs, and Harmony, those four of the five final Cylons.
You know what? That makes a lot of sense. I wonder if those are code names for our characters. Like, who's most likely to be named Bones? Probably Doc Cottle, because he had a lot of Doc McCoy in him.
So I am now trying to think about, because obviously Mike has never seen Battlestar Galactica before. This is a spoiler-free podcast, but it is filled with Easter eggs for people who have seen Battlestar Galactica before, like me. And now I'm trying to think of Bone, Thugs, and Harmony as four of the five Cylons.
See, that's interesting, because and is very like Simon. It's like there's
no
real thing to attach them besides a definite article. So I wonder if there is. I mean, it would really suck if the final five, there's 20% of them that's just like, oh yeah, they're there too.
Like along the way, obviously we will have an opportunity to revisit conversations about the Cylons who have yet to be revealed. We will task the team behind the curtain with having us remember, do Bone, Thugs, and Harmony apply to four of the final five Cylons? We'll see.
Patricia Arquette guest star appearance. Harmony.
Harmony Cobell. Yeah, you never know. Anyway, Crossroads. It's a two-parter. We've in the past talked about all of the finales across two different episodes. I have said throughout Season 3, my belief is Crossroads plays best if we can talk about the whole thing at once. So that's what we're going to do. We are going to watch the 2 hours of Crossroads, have a big conversation about it on the Season 3 finale of Battlestar Galactica, the Season 3 finale of Down the Hatch. We will go on another one of our famous hiatuses after that and return to your feeds with, I assume we will return with Razor, as well as some feedback about Season 3 and some look backs at Season 3, Razor being one of the movies for Battlestar Galactica.
And listen, if you're not checking out our videos here, you might see that Josh Wigler has already had an early battle with Razor.
I fought a Razor and I lost.
Well, look at this little baby face boy now.
If you're missing the video version, then you're missing for the very first time since my 20s. I got no beard. I got no beard. I got no facial hair. I think I now look 30 years old as a result of this. So is this a hack? Should I just be like a smooth-faced baby boy for the next little while, as I'm like worried about my aging bodice? Mike, is this a way to counteract aging? Is to just look like
they're just looking at the smooth skin on your face. They're not paying attention to anything below the neck.
I always feel like I look like 5 years younger than I actually am, and now I feel like I look 10 years younger than I actually am. But that makes me 30, which is an age that I feel good about looking right now. When I was 30 and I would shave my face and I would look like a 20-year-old boy, that didn't seem so appealing to me. Now, like, I get to go back to my 30s. Like, this is like me as a Cylon undercover. It's like that guy is not 40 years old, but like secretly, I am.
Exactly. That's it. What if that was it? That there was
Does a
an
secret 40-year-old apply with a freshly shorn face apply to any of the final five Cylons?
ooh.
Let's revisit that as well. We'll put a pin in that
Okay.
too.
Well, who's getting a lot of work done
We're
amongst the
getting a
final
lot of work
five?
done. Who's getting a lot of work done? Before we talk about Crossroads, of course, we have to talk about this penultimate installment. The sun also rises. Mike, having watched this again, for me, here's my take. You ready? The final 4 episodes of season 3 of Battlestar Galactica is akin to that final stretch of episodes of Lost in season 3.
Oh, yeah,
Where
baby.
I love the New Caprica arc so much, and I think that that is still like my favorite arc of the show. But I think that there is an argument that this is that power spot of BSG, because I know what we're ramping up towards, and this episode does a lot of work to get us there. We have a brand new character who I adore and cannot wait to talk about here. We've got some like shifting occupations here. Hilo getting a random promotion. He's CAG
And then,
now.
and
It's
then
like,
almost a demotion and then a promotion again. Like, never mind. No, make him
never mind.
promoted
Hilo, we need
permanently.
you the thing. Lee changing jobs, reintroducing the trial of Gaius Baltar. Just a lot going on. The aftermath of Starbuck's death, and I think actually like a stealthily great episode for Anders. So I love this one, and I think that it fits very neatly with this final arc that we are on the other side of what we've talked about. Was like not like the grimmest, episodes we have ever seen, but like, like a little bit miss me on some of the quality of some
Yeah.
of the episodes.
Not
And
less grimace, more hamburglar.
yeah. But I think we're getting like real burger right now. This is like, I should have ordered that.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
we're
Give me
housing
that.
Dylan's burger right now.
Yeah, I mean, the opposite of a nothing burger. I enjoyed this episode. I'm intrigued to get into it more with you, and I think this is where, to your point, having the foresight to be able to see where this is
Yes.
going probably gives you even more enjoyment. Because right now,
This feels like
it
greater hits adjacent to
that
me,
makes
which
sense
is
because that
interesting because like Starbucks death feels like
greatest hits,
greater
yeah.
hits, but it's like sort of like that one feels a bit like Man Behind the Curtain and the Brig and greatest hits combined into one episode. And now this is sort of like that greatest hits spot where we have to like sort of like a part one of a 3-part finale kind of deal is how I view this one.
I mean, I am still, even as we're encroaching upon, 3/4 of the way through our coverage here, trying to mentally get settled into the setting in which these characters are brought in all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Where in some cases, we might have characters that are randomly introduced and will stick around for the entirety of the series. Dean Stockwell is a great example of this. Sometimes we might have characters like that one random pilot we found in the Hero episode that, like,
Carl Lumbly, yeah.
yeah, like, okay, they're gonna play one main role in the episode, and then they're never gonna be seen
Have some
again.
respect. That man was once Captain America, okay?
Yes, exactly. But so it's I'm always trying to sort of like temper my expectations when a new character comes in because it's like I can enjoy them in the moment, but there's always a voice in the back of my head that's like, you don't know what's coming. You
Sure.
don't know if they're ever going to show up again, especially now that we're in a world where, to your point, Lucy Lawless and Dean Stockwell both had pretty major appearances on the show after I thought that they wouldn't. So here comes the Irish brogue himself, BSG Daredevil, essentially, to the point where I thought he was legitimately and legally blind for most of
Yes.
the episode because he just wears sunglasses indoors
Yes.
in Lampkin. And I think even if this
I
character
think
does,
you're not allowed to talk about him unless you give him first name, last name treatment.
well,
Romo Lampkin.
Romo Lampkin.
Romo Lampkin.
Well, I do think that regardless of whether Romo Lampkin continues to Romo over our screens after season 3, I think even outside of that, what he represents in particular for the character of Leodama means so much to me because I've been talking about this so many times, Josh. I've probably said the word Bastille Day more times than any French person in their life because of that episode, because of
I somehow doubt that, but I hear the point.
yeah, exactly. Of this how this episode was so important in kind of establishing Leodama.
Early establishing, right? Like early establishment of Leodama, like cares deeply about the law. Like, this
Well,
is a thing that he's studied and a thing that
yeah,
he can recite chapter and verse. Like, he had read what's his face's books, like Tom Zarek's
the Tom
stuff.
Zerek's
Like,
books, yeah.
like short of being a hotshot pilot, he could, like, if he could clone himself, he would be hotshot pilot, hotshot lawyer.
Oh, we could have a really William Thomas Riker situation with Lee Adama if that was the case. But
Well, there's also Cylons on the show, Mike. So
that's,
you never know.
don't don't break my heart, Josh, by saying Lee Adama is a
I'm
Cylon. I
just
don't.
I'm just saying that you just have to keep in mind that anyone can be a Cylon at any point in time.
If that's the case, then I'm Team Cylon. I'm fine with them winning. Because I think that it's only been a couple times since that we've really touched upon this idea of, again, from my perspective, Lee sort of being one of the moral compasses of the show, that he won't necessarily be that soldier that just does what he's told, that he might legitimately consider, like, yeah, can we think about the moral ramifications of us doing this? It's what caused this really tense standoff at the end of season 1 where he holds Colonel Ty at gunpoint at a
Yes.
certain point and causes him to get jailed in Galactica in the beginning of a season 2. And so we kind of had that lie dormant in the midst of, to your point, getting into some more emotional, romantic stuff with Lee, or career-based stuff with, Pegasus. We'll see Kelly show up here to basically just play the role of bad guy. So here I'm very glad that we're finally approaching this theme again, that it doesn't feel like this is just dead and buried and gone in the past, and that the fat suit love triangle Lee Adama was here to stay.
Yeah. We're in really, really great Leodama territory right now, I think. If you are somebody who liked the Leodama of Bastille Day, this episode does a lot there, and it leaves us in a place where, like, that can and kind of has to continue based on where we leave the action in this episode. I want to talk about Roma Lampkin. Before we even get into the episode itself, Mike, I want to talk about Roma Lampkin, who is played by Mark Shepard, who is a terrific actor on many a TV program. Outside of Battlestar Galactica, for me, I know him from an arc as a bad guy on 24, season 5, I believe it is, that he shows up there. Supernatural fans know him as, I
Oh,
believe he
yes.
is the King of Hell
Crowley.
on Supernatural. I'm not a Supernatural guy. Are you a Supernatural guy?
I was a little bit. I think it ran for what, like 16, 17 seasons. And so I've watched bits and
I thought
pieces here and there.
100. I thought like 100
Felt
seasons.
like it.
But yeah, he has a big role there. So I just want to shout that out because I know that there are people who are gonna be like, "That's the guy." Like, he's an important guy. It would be like if we saw Matthew Fox on something and we didn't mention that he was Jack on Lost. So beloved actor by many, but for me, and I assume, and I believe actually, even for Mark Shepard, this is the role. Roma Lampkin.
Oh,
Roma
really?
Lampkin is the guy. And so, like, I want to just, like, off the bat let you know, when it comes to, like, I don't mind spoiling this. When it comes to, like, is this character just floating through and not going to matter? Is this character going to be here for a minute? I will not tell you about length of the character, but as far as, like, will you
Yeah, it's
remember
tough to
this
determine his
character?
height.
Will you remember this character? Will you know when we close the book on Battlestar Galactica and we talk about characters from it, like, months after the fact, a year after the fact? If I said the word, I don't even know what Carl Lumbly's character was, what his name was, right? Like, I don't know who
Yeah.
that guy is. I would say Carl Lumbly. Do you remember he was on the show? When I say Roma
Bulldog,
Lampkin,
Bulldog.
yeah, if you said Bulldog, I'd have to think about it. Like, a year from now, I'd really have to think about it. A year from now, if I say to you Roma Lampkin, you will know exactly who that guy is. So do not worry about that. And in fact, I would say be excited because this character fucking rules. I love Roma Lampkin. There's some great backstory about how he became involved in the show. This is from the Galacticast, the Mark Bernardin and Trisha Helfer podcast that the great Brendan Fitzpatrick monitors every week as we are going into each week for any sort of, like, relevant details that we can bring into the mix. Mark Shepard, he met Ron Moore through some writers, including Javier Grillo Marx Watch, who he was friends with at the
Ah.
time. And Mark Shepard loved Battlestar Galactica. He, after being introduced to Ron Moore, said to Ron Moore, "I will do anything to be on the show. I'll clean the floors, anything if it ever comes up." He knew a lot of the people involved in BSG. He had met David Icke before. He had worked with Trisha Helfer on an episode of CSI. The way that he gets the part is Ron Moore calls Mark Shepard over to his house to fix his Wi-Fi. Apparently Mark Shepard is, like, a big computer guy. Like, if you need someone to come and fix your Wi-Fi, you call Romo Lamb.
This is a Geek Squad?
He's Geek Squad, baby. So he goes over, and when he gets there, Ron Moore plops a script down in front of him. It's a number of episodes of Battlestar Galactica. I will not say how many, for the character of Romo Lampkin. And Romo was a pet name for Ron Moore from the writer of this episode,
Oh, that makes
Michael
sense.
Angeli. So that's where Romo comes from. Ron Moore says to Mark Shepard, I think you'll like this. It's not like anything you've ever done. Apparently, Ron had asked Michael Angeli to create this character specifically with Mark Shepard in mind. And Mark Shepard said he had the scripts were absolutely beautiful, and he had never had someone like write for him before. What's great, and this is a part of the transcript that I have to be kind of careful about reading out loud right now. He shows up to the table read for this episode. And so this table read, I believe, is for like, I think probably like these final 4 episodes. So the one we just watched last week, this one, and the 2-part finale. And he shows up for the table read, and everybody there is pissed off about what's happened previously and what they had been told and not told about what's coming next in the fallout.
Shit!
Mark Shepard says,
we're gonna jettison a bunch of characters after season 3? This makes
Mark,
me intrigued.
Mark Shepard says it was quite tense. It was incredible. I was such a massive fan of the show, and I was just plopped down into this extraordinary situation. I got to sneak in through the back door of the show in the aftermath of the emotional hand grenade of Cara Thrace dying.
That reminds me of like Paul Rudd's story that he used to tell, right, about like being on set during the Friends finale, where like everyone's like crying and hugging each other, and he's like, "I just got here."
Yes, except it would be, I mean, I don't know what Paul Rudd's like Friends fandom was at the time, but like Mark Shepard, Geek Squad extraordinaire, I think was like a BSG geek. Like, he is a BS geek. He loved the show, and Ron Moore knew that and wrote a role for him. And it's a juicy role. What's compelling to me about this story, Mike, is Mark Shepard is geeking out and like trying to keep his chill. Romo Lampkin, he doesn't have to worry about that. He's all chill. He's cool, calm, collective, and just a totally different vibe suddenly dropped into the middle of Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, I mean, this guy is like the biggest dick swinger on the show. Like,
Yeah.
he walks into an incredibly hostile setting where his
Romo
life
Lampkin also rises.
yeah,
every
exactly.
day.
Like, and he's
like,
never
and I don't
falls.
need to rise. I could just hang too. And
Exactly.
like,
Like,
wow.
they don't call it modern wood. I just call it wood. But he's walking into an incredibly hostile setting, representing the most reprehensible man currently in humanity right now, having his life threatened several times over, and he does not blink. Now, maybe it's because of whether or not his tragic backstory is true. If it is that, like, he's a man hardened by, his own past, but it does bring this very confident energy into a time where all of these characters are probably at their least confident, given how much the loss of Starbuck has shaken who they are to the core.
Some other details about Romo Lampkin. I want to talk about the glasses. There were a few different pairs of glasses before they settled on the ones that he liked the best and ended up wearing on the show. There's a great exchange on Galacticast between Mark Bernardin and Mark Shepard. Bernardin says that his theory was that when Romo Lampkin is wearing the glasses, he's telling the truth. And when he's not wearing the glasses, he's lying to you. Mark Shepard says that's absolutely not true.
Yeah.
Mark Shepard says the purpose of the glasses is to shield my eyes when I feel like wearing them. The purpose is to not reveal too much about himself and choosing when and what to reveal or withhold. Not lying, but withholding. I don't want them to get a read on what the character is saying or doing. So this is like Romo Lampkin to me, like, he is a lawyer. He has a very, very different vibe and energy from basically anybody we have on the show, in no small part because, like, I would really like to see him play cards with the late, great Starbuck. because he seems like a poker player, right? Like he
Oh,
has
yeah.
like
I mean, poker players to that point, they wear a lot of sunglasses. Though, of course, there's also this weird thing about reflective surfaces where certain pairs are banned. But like, the eyes are the windows to the soul, as Winston Churchill once said. And so he wants to make sure that those windows are as shut as many times as it can, and to the point where it's almost an even greater deal when he takes them off as to when he puts them on, because he's
yes,
gonna say like, listen, I'm gonna level with you here. I'm gonna let you look into my eyes so you
yeah.
know I'm telling you the truth.
Uh, Mark Shepard says this character does not adhere to the same canon as the other characters on the show. To the point of what you were saying about Paul Rudd, just like sort of like being there for the finale. He's basically saying like he's just dropping in, like he was not
Mhm.
part of all of this stuff that was happening before. He says that's what makes him so special, both in the show and to the viewers. He's an upsetter. He upsets the balance of the show. This role is so special to me because I was a fan of the show and I got to come in and operate outside the rules of the show, outside the rules of the story in a way no other character could at this point in time. So he loves this role. People like there are people who will tell you Romo Lampkin is their favorite character on Battlestar Galactica.
Really?
I don't want to misrepresent the Ben behind the curtain. I think I know who his favorite character is on Battlestar Galactica, and it's not Romo Lampkin, but I think Romo
I-
Lampkin is high on the list for him.
Is that a character that we have met yet, or
His favorite character?
yeah?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, what I would say is that Romo Lampkin is giving me very big Henry Gale
Yes.
vibes, and not necessarily Ben Linus. It's more so the days of like, okay, you might be involved in this in a few episodes, and then we'll see how much of a fan favorite you become. But it's definitely that nebulous territory, right? Now,
Yes.
granted, Henry Gale at least was brought in under a more unsuspecting guise of like, help, my hot air balloon crashed, and this woman shot me through the shoulder with a crossbow. Here, Lampkin, like, is pretty much wearing what he is at least trying to put across on his face of like, nope, I'm the seedy lawyer for the seedy former president.
Yes.
So, but I think at the same time, this is a character that, as you mentioned before, it's this change of energy. It's this new ingredient essentially introduced. And we saw that with Ben. I think a lot of people obviously glom onto Michael Emerson's performance there. It's not completely unsurprising, especially as I imagine those who work in the legal industry.
Yeah.
I have not watched really a lot of Suits, but I would imagine a lot of Harvey Specter vibes from Rollo Lampkin as well.
Yeah. One last thing I want to say from the Galactic cast, and then we'll get into the episode. There's a scene later on in the episode where Lee grabs Romo Lampkin by the lapel, right?
Hmm.
You recall this?
Oh yeah.
Um, Mark Shepard says that when that happened, he when he grabs my lapel, these are quotes from Mark Shepard. He says he actually grabbed full nipple. It's in the take they use. It hurt. It was excruciating. He grabbed full boob. The look on my face made the glasses very useful in that moment. So full boob grab caught on camera, presented
Wow.
here in The Sun Also Rises, Mike Bloom.
Wow. Who would have thought? I mean, listen, in a different environment, this would have been very, very bad for Jamie Bamber.
I
But
think it was an
luckily,
accident, but like he went full boob.
yeah. And listen, you need to suffer for your art. I guess maybe he felt in that moment that he wanted to truly feel in pain, subjugated. And he, as the victim of a fierce nipple twist, I think he probably felt the most vulnerable that Rollo Lampkin would ever feel.
Yes, purple nurple would be an interesting call sign.
Wet Willie is the best one, though.
I think so too. All right, Mike, let's talk about the episode here. Season 3, episode 18, The Sun Also Rises, directed by Robert Young, written by Michael Angeli, originally aired March 11th, 2007. I was getting very close to graduating from college at this point. 22nd birthday, I believe, if I'm mathing
And
correctly.
you look just like you've
Now
just
I look
celebrated
like
it.
that guy again. Yeah, wow, amazing. On the big G, we are mourning Starbuck.
Are we, though? I was very surprised we did not get a Starbuck funeral in this episode.
Yeah. Was it not enough Starbuck fallout for you?
I don't know, because on the one hand, I understand the idea of forward-facing momentum, especially with a finale barreling down the horizon. And I didn't necessarily just want an episode of everyone kind of like stewing in their feelings. I mean, hell, even the beginning of the end in Lost, the first episode of season 4, like some characters are mourning Charlie, but there's still this element of people being like, okay, but we got to move on and do this other stuff. So I very much understand it. I don't think it did the character a disservice. It just very much surprised me that we did not get this big melodramatic speech from Adama, and that we're instead cutting to what, a week, 2 weeks after her death?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's totally fair, and I could imagine maybe that impacts your enjoyment of this episode a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's just, again, it's expectations and it's results. And so I was a little surprised how Starbucks certainly exists and her presence will inform a lot of what these characters are doing, particularly from the Adamas. But it did feel a little odd to like not really incorporate the main crux of this major character moment into it. Like I'm fine with what they did. I could have wanted more, I think
Yeah.
is probably where I settled in on it.
Sure. What we do get is Adama going through Starbucks records. He's even like fond of the disciplinary notices. There was this birthday card with a mustache on it, and he says, "I see the resemblance." So he's having like this really kind of touching moment. Meanwhile, Sam Anders is not doing well. He's drunk. He's atop a Viper. He
Who
keeps
let him onto this ship? Wasn't Lee didn't Lee put him on another ship? Why does he keep having an open invitation to onto
I
the
don't know.
Big
I think
G?
I feel like Lee kind of feels like, given the history, like he does not have much of a right to stand in Sam's way. And I think that
Mm.
Sam and Lee are grieving Starbuck in a way that no one else is on this ship, but they are grieving her very much in
I
the same
hope
way.
so. I do not necessarily
Yeah,
want to think about if Starbuck was entertaining any other
well,
suitors in those bunks.
Baltar, Gaius for sure.
Does Gaius
Uh,
Baltar know?
let's wait and see. You
And
know,
what if he finds out like on the stand, he's like, "What? Why did no one tell me?
could
This
be
is 3 weeks
interesting.
ago."
Could be interesting. While he's on the Viper, we see Figursky and Skulls, not Bones,
Nah, not
Thugs
bulk.
or Harmony, or Harmony. Yeah, no Bulk either. They're trying to talk him down. In the Memorial Hall, Lee is going to pin Starbuck's picture up next to Kat as desired. At least that's like fresh in his mind. Um, but he gets interrupted by Racetrack.
My God, it's been 2 weeks. I got to get around to this now.
Yeah, so Racetrack calls for him. Sam is being unruly, so Lee goes and he's able to talk Sam down. Sam is crying, and he has this like moment of shared acknowledgement with Lee. I think that like I think that the post death Starbuck Sam Anders is a really interesting character, and I think that
Okay.
we get a good start to that here.
I mean, better late than never.
I know. Yeah.
Like you're like, oh, this is a really great episode for Sam Anders, and I'm like, sure.
Yeah.
News to me. He has a broken leg to mourn as well as a broken heart in this way because he really eats it off that
Yeah, he
Viper.
biffs it. He drops. Um, we go to Colonial 1. Here's Tori again. Tori is here drawing names out of a fishbowl to give to Roslin to make up Baltar's tribunal. And under military scrutiny, each captain of the fleet is in that bowl. We see Elias Meeker. What a name, Elias Meeker.
Sounds like the name of a fictional scientist who invents like a horrible cloning technology gone wrong.
Yeah, yeah. So he's pulled out, and a final name is drawn, and Rosalind's like, "Whoo!" And it's clear that it's Adama. Adama is going to be part of the tribunal for Gaius Baltar. So we get that because when we see him with Ty next, Ty just like says, "Your Honor," and he says, "You own 1/5 of Gaius Baltar's skinny ass."
Yeah. So I just needed a bit of a reminder because again, it's been a while since we sort of talked about the storyline. So how is what Lee was brought on for different than the tribunal?
How is what Lee was brought on for different from the tribunal? Adama, I think, is like being brought on as effectively like judge and jury, right?
Hmm.
Is
Maybe
the role
executioner.
right? That's the role that he's coming on for. As for Lee, what's going to end up happening is like he comes on as like he's on as like Romo detail, and Lampkin is like we need to have somebody who we have to have someone on the Baltar side of the
Right.
equation.
I more so meant when we had this storyline a few episodes back, right? When they're like, okay, Rosalind wants somebody to like help serve as part of this legal counsel to help arrange the trial. I thought Lee was bringing part of that. I'd assumed it was tied into this tribunal, but I guess they're two
I think
different
it's like
things.
this is like sort of like random draw jury. But
Okay.
like, the amount of people that they have to draw from is like how many people are still
Should
alive right now?
Belladama be exempt from that then, considering, like, I'm pretty sure you get out of jury duty if one of your family members is involved with the council.
You would think so, and I think I would also think that like Admiral of the Fleet, maybe he's got other shit to do.
Yeah, the president of the United States doesn't really do jury duty, you
Well,
know?
not
I think
yet.
yeah,
Not yet, you
I
know?
think that, they have other matters to attend to. And I think even if they do, they could easily use that excuse of, like, "I need to be into work tomorrow, so I cannot sit on this petty crime case."
Yeah. So he is getting that deal. Um, Racetrack and a few other people are like on board to like ferry Baltar's lawyer around. So Baltar's lawyer is a dude named Alan Hughes, or should I say, was a dude named Alan
Good. I'm
Hughes
so glad this guy ends
because
up
he dead.
biting the mortal coil in favor of Romo Lampkin. Because, like, isn't the story about, like, how he takes off his shoes in the Raptor, which, like, it's just such a no-no
Yeah.
that he's like a close talker and a whisperer. He's basically BSG's ASMR, but he ain't whispering no more.
Not really. I guess I have to give an obligatory LVP point to Alan Hughes for dying.
I think you should, as well as just
Okay.
apparently not having a lot of great consideration for the people around him.
All right. Well, we'll get there. We start to get like a little bit of a sense of like some of the people around here who are just like not here for the Baltar trial. Skulls says justice would be Baltar being dead. Callie is the one that says justice means everybody gets a trial, even Baltar. Is that like born out of the stuff with her husband holding his own trials? I guess probably.
I don't know, because then she's about to be really racist in a few minutes. So, like, maybe
Yeah.
she has a very warped perception as to, like, every human deserves a trial, not a Cylon, though.
Yeah. Uh, Roslyn holds a press conference about the bombing, and she's asked how they're going to replace Baltar's lawyer. Is it going to be by lottery? She says they're working their way down a list. Someone asks, should the trial even continue? And she says terrorism is not going to alter the framework of the legal system. Though probably, like secretly, she and everybody else are like, yeah, shouldn't we just like throw him out the airlock? Just get it over
Yeah, like,
with.
if the star witness just happened to disappear, if the defendant just happened to hang himself in his cell, wouldn't this tie things up really nicely?
Let's just, like, let's wrap this up. But that's not what's going to happen. Um, we go to the pilots. Lee does a briefing with the pilots. Hilo is here. So Hilo suddenly is part of the pilot. Like, Hilo, like, Saul came back and Hilo sort of just like, I don't know.
Go to
Where do you want?
Dogsville,
Where do
dude.
you want me? Where do you want me? Plug me in. So Lee is making some mistakes. He talks about a Dratus picket in Sector 7. What he means is Sector 9. Hilo points that out. And Racetrack tells Lee, like, oh, well, make sure everybody checks underneath their back seat. And Lee says, hey, you got lucky, Starbuck. And everyone's like, oh. That's like when you
Oh.
like say mom instead of your teacher's name in first
Yeah,
grade
yeah,
when it
unless
was me when I did that. And it was so embarrassing.
yeah, but, like,
Sorry, Mrs. Clark.
but except you're also doing your mom.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sort of, I guess it's sort of like that,
It's
Mike.
I guess it's sorta like you doing your mom
A
and then
little bit.
calling the teacher mom who
Yeah.
you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a different, I hadn't thought about it that way, Mike. And fortunately now
Who
I don't
among
think
us?
I can't unthink it. Oh gosh. But okay. We meet the man, new lawyer, Romo Lampkin rolls in.
And
And
he's
here
he's a cat guy.
he's a catman. So I think this is another reason why I love Romo Lampkin is he's a cat guy. So he's a cat
Though,
guy.
like, begrudgingly so, and maybe this is part of, like, whether or not we're supposed to trust him is, like,
Right.
does he really hate the cat and just keeps it around due to his late wife, or is he just, like, trying to almost, oversell it, be like, I don't love this thing, this pest in my hair," and then, like, behind the scenes, like, "Look at you, come here, little kitty. Oh, I love you so much. Who's a good boy?"
I think it's fair to look at most of Romo Lampkin as like what's true and what's not. Like what is authentic and what's a prop. Like what is like his like actual story? What is his actual history? What are his actual intentions to the point
Mhm.
of Henry Gale? right? Like,
Yeah.
should we be suspicious of this guy in like Cylon
You got any
territory? Like,
milk for me, Lucky Charms?
like where are his lucky charms? Like there's a lot of different things. Like it could be as sinister as like Henry Gale was the leader of the others, right? Is Romo Lampkin Cylon adjacent or Cylon involved? Is Romo Lampkin none of those things, but is just like sort of like a shady, mysterious guy? And the Henry Gale of it all is masking something else. So is the cat part of that? I think is a fair question to ask. Like the glasses, the cat, you think he's blind at first. He ain't. So like, what is his deal? There's a lot that is on the surface that is obfuscating what's underneath. Cat might be out of the bag, but is it really?
Ah, I like that. Yeah, I mean, the cat being out of the bag is going to save his life at a certain aspect. So
Yes.
maybe it turns out like this could be a Men in Black situation where like the cat is actually the one in control of Lampkin. Maybe Lampkin's just like a shell of a person, and the cat's
Yeah.
the one in control at all times.
Yeah. So the cat was his wife's, is what he says. They ask him what his qualifications are. He says, "I was born for this case. Also, I have a pulse. Like you need someone to do it, and I can do it." And he says, "If it's any comfort, I despise Baltar as much as you despise having to hire me to defend him." So Adama hires his son to be on Romo Lampkin's security detail. Lee thinks he's being grounded because of how he is sort of off the mark.
It does
Uh,
feel extra loaded when your dad is sort of like your commander and also your father, and that
yes.
being grounded takes on so many meanings.
Yes. Go to your room. So
No
at least he does.
TV, no
Yeah.
udon for a month.
Yeah. Go to your room, O Lampkin. So he's being sent to his room, O Lampkin. And Hilo will be made CAG in the meantime. Hilo, just a jack of all trades, Carl Agathon. How could you not recognize him? Now, can't you understand why he's on the
No,
cover?
this is even more the case because this guy doesn't really have a job. He has every job and no
Every
job at the
job.
same time. So it's like he's like, I don't even know what I'm doing
Utility
here.
player. Someone else was supposed to be on the Blu-ray cover. They didn't show up for photo day, and Carl's like, "I can do it." And they're like, "Yeah, come on in." And there's like, "We'll put you on the
Yeah,
Blu-ray
he's kind of the
cover."
Candace Woodcock Cody of PSG
Yeah,
characters. Like no matter what the theme, he'll just kind of
just
show
plug
up.
me in. Just plug me in. I'll be fine. So we get our first scene between Lee and Lampkin. Roma wants to meet with his client right away. He wants to meet with Gaius Baltar immediately. And he doesn't want it to be in his cell. He doesn't want it to be in his interrogation room. Lee suggests we can bring Baltar to you, but Lampkin says, my room's going to be bugged. So how about your room before it's bugged? And Lee is fine with that as long as he gets to be there as well. And Lampkin tells Lee that like I should be able to consult with my client in private with no one listening. Whoever cares the most wins, is what he says. And that is a saying from a book called Law and Mind, dun, 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 The Psychology of Legal Practice, written by one Joseph Adama, Mike Bloom.
Joey Adama, aka William Adama's father, aka Lee Adama's grandfather. And so, yeah, it turns out that this guy has a connection to the family firsthand and that he was working with Joseph Adama, who definitely, much like Starbuck, exists posthumously in this episode, as we obviously know that, either William was kind of the black sheep of the family or just like the two of them never really got along in terms of what they wanted to pursue. And so now it became this question for Lee, right? As to like, is it just skipping a generation
Right.
or is he his father's son or his grandfather's grandson? Is essentially the question this character is going to have.
Yeah. Roma Lampkin tells Lee, you look a lot like your grandfather. I hated him, but he taught
Which
me
proves
everything
I'm
I know.
not blind.
Yeah. He taught me everything I know. So someone's building a bomb. We'll get into that later. Freaking Kelly, who we hadn't seen in a long time, and he just shows up. This is what he's doing.
I thought he might have gone with the Pegasus. Like when the Pegasus got destroyed, I was like, all right, well, goodbye, Kelly. Goodbye,
No, he's
employment.
here.
But no, he's
He's
been
here.
hanging around, I guess.
He's here. So Baltar gets brought under armed guard to Lee's quarter and his quarters, and Lee stays. But Lampkin says, "Don't worry, Lee signed a confidentiality agreement." And Baltar rightly is like pathetic. Like
Yeah, like
you're trying to
please,
tell me like
I know reality TV. These NDAs are flimsy.
they don't mean anything. He said his previous lawyer, all he managed to do was nap and smuggle out some papers. So at least there was that. His like books are getting out there. And Lampkin is able to give Baltar a little tiny pad to write on. And Baltar's writing, and Lampkin says, "Do you think you're going to get a fair trial?" Or Baltar asks him that, and Lampkin says, "Probably not." But you're not helping your case at all because you're being like an undesirable client and an uncooperative client. And so Lampkin says, like, keep writing, whatever. Your manifesto shows a great change in you, and it keeps people guessing. So this is sort of like game respects game. He's like, what you're doing right now is fine, and like maybe a little bit of like, if I'm telling you that it's fine and like giving you like some reasons why I think it's fine, you may like begin to sort of like, trust me a little bit more.
And also this idea that we found out a little bit a few episodes ago, right? Which is like your writings are, I wouldn't say being completely turned away by the people. It's glomming onto some of the main characters that we have. So you are slowly but surely perhaps winning over some of the hearts and minds. And not to say that, the tribunal or Roslin will weigh public opinion wholly when making their verdict, but it might certainly help, especially that considering this previously on, we've gotten so many times of Tom Zarek essentially prognosticating how much rioting there will be in the streets if there's a trial.
Yeah. But Lampkin further ingratiates himself to Baltar. He quotes not just from Joseph Adama's book, but he quotes from Gaius Baltar's pseudo Mein Kampf. He says, to listen requires a voice. For what needs to be known requires us to ask. Baltar likes that. He's like, you say that very well. Do you want to do the audiobook when it comes out?
I'd love to, but I can't read. I'm
That's
blind. Actually, I could do the audiobook.
He's like, I'm blind, as he winks underneath his glasses. So once they leave, Lampkin asks Lee, can you take me to Colonial One? And Lee says, well, we've got to coordinate that. He says, no.
No, you don't.
You really don't. And like, Lee's like, you're talking like a really big game. Like, I think you're going to get yourself hurt here. And Lampkin says, well, if you're with me, I think I've got a good chance of like actually getting the information I need to solve this thing with Baltar. In the notes from the Ben behind the curtain, he says, otherwise they might discover Baltar is pregnant.
I wanted to talk about this. Yes,
Yeah.
I was just about to talk about this because what Lampkin says basically is like, all right, you have to take me immediately to Colonial One and get these files that Baltar was asking for before they find out Baltar's pregnant. Now, I imagine this is some sort of loaded term for like, he is, they find out that he is looking for something and then they'd be able to like dispose of the files, kind of what happens later on in the episode. But all I could think about, Josh, was that pet theory during Severance season 2 that Mark was pregnant. It's like, oh man, they're really listen, it's sci-fi. Anything can happen. If we have seen one pregnant female Cylon, who's to say that it couldn't have gone the other way and Hilo might have gotten pregnant via Sharon Agathon's baby.
Wow, big theory. We could be going into some junior territory here on Battlestar Galactica. Lee is going to take a raptor out and fly Lampkin, but the cat jumps out and runs under, like, it's a bomb sniffing cat apparently,
or just like a coincidental cat that just like they're looking for the cat. And good on Tyrell for being like, okay, I'll bring the kitty over. Like because as he's looking under the undercarriage, he's like, oh, there's a bomb. Wow.
There's a bomb.
So listen, advantage to getting a cat, people, is sometimes they might run out of your arms, get under your vehicle, and you can, as you should always do, check for any mines and other pieces of terrorist equipment that have been planted to possibly end your life.
Mike, Adama is going to summon Lee to his office, and he is going to not be super thrilled with how his son is doing his job. Your job is security. There was a bomb on the ship. You missed it.
Yeah. Understandably so. I mean, Lee is going to try to use the logic, right, of like, they kept rushing me out. And I mean, we'll see a bit of the smoking gun or bomb is that Kelly was like trying to not let Lee on initially. And that was clearly to protect him. But basically, Lee's pitch is like, I'm trying to do the best that I can.
Yes.
And Adama, again, Lee is a character that at his best is suffering an identity crisis as to like who he's supposed to be.
Who am I?
And Adama, exactly. And Adama very much fortifying his perspective on his son, which is, quote, you're a soldier, live like one, start acting like one. And then Lee decides to really say the quiet part out loud with, she's been dead 2 weeks. I didn't realize the clock was running.
Yeah. Adama's pissed.
Because like, they're basically arguing over like who's feeling feeling Starbuck's death more, basically trying to like one up themselves in terms of the pity party.
Yeah. Adama says 2 weeks from now, it's Baltar's trial. I'm going to do my job. You better do yours as well. Build a nest around Lampkin and protect his ass. Because, like, he doesn't want to hire anyone else. He doesn't want to
Yeah.
keep hiring people. He doesn't want people to keep blowing up. So, like, please don't let this guy blow up. Too many, like, no more blow ups. No more bombs,
Yeah, don't let
please.
this become the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher of Battlestar
Yeah.
Galactica, where there's just a different one every episode.
We get into it at the hangar deck. Kelly is pissed, of course, because we know Kelly is the bomber. Callie is also pissed. Callie thinks that the Cylons are doing this to force everyone to fight amongst themselves. And Athena's like, I don't think that's what it is. And Callie says, well, maybe you think that because you're a Cylon, you little bitch. It's like, whoa,
Yeah,
Callie.
because he's like, "Oh, well, some of us don't get a second chance or a third." And Athena's like, she'll bring this up later in a deleted scene. She's like, "Why would I put a bomb on the ship that I was flying?"
Yeah.
Though
Because
again, let's
Callie's like, well, because then you could just regenerate somewhere.
well, let's also remember the very loaded dynamic between not the two of them specifically, but someone that looked like Sharon Agathon, and the fact that Kelly did kill Boomer in cold
Yes.
blood.
Yes. Maybe
So
she's just got the hunger. She wants to kill another boomer.
hashtag not all boomers,
Not
man.
all boomers. Some
Athena's
boomers
proven
are good.
herself many times over.
Yeah. We don't love all of this. We go to Lampkin's quarters. Lee tells him, memorize the room. Touch nothing out of place. Get out of here if anything smells funny. Never open the door. And Lampkin's like, this is ridiculous. If someone wants to kill me, they're going to find a way. And then he says, who do I got to bribe to talk to the Cylon chick?
Yeah. So that is the main thing. Is this is something that we put down a few weeks ago, but is going to get picked back up here. That Caprica 6 was going to be the star witness
Yep.
of this trial, right? That she was in exchange for kind of like amnesty with the humans. She was going to speak on behalf of the prosecution on the stand against Gaius Baltar. And so now Lampkin's going to try to essentially get in her head. And Adama is going to try to do his own little loophole here, basically
Yes.
saying, like, well, because I was there when the prosecution talked to her off screen, both
I'm going to
sides,
be
right?
there when the defense talks to
Scales
him,
of
too.
justice, gotta keep it balanced. I'm gonna
Yeah.
be there too in the background, murmuring to myself.
Yeah, but Lee's mad, and Lee once again is like, "Okay, whatever. Where are the documents that Lampkin needs?" And Tori's like, "Oh, can't find them. Having trouble finding them."
Yeah,
And
she's like feeding them through the shredder.
yeah, exactly. And Roz is like, "We'll find them. We'll find them. We'll get them to you right away." Um, we get a great scene, I think, between Lampkin and Caprica 6, with everybody watching from the outside, and this is where Roma Lampkin really shows up for me. Where he's like, okay, you had a relationship with Baltar, and she's like really raking him across the coals. He was narcissistic, self-centered, feckless. Do you know what feckless means, Mike?
Well, I guess I didn't realize. I mean, Baltar was a scientist. Of course, Mick Trimming, famously of Survivor Samoa, was a
Famously,
doctor. So maybe
yeah.
it's all men of science are regarded as feckless.
You're never gonna find a more solid guy. You just won't.
Yeah, maybe call her Sixbo. Where's the mullet coming in?
Sixbo. That's a new look. We'll get that in the final season. So she says, like, I should have stabbed him. And Rosalind watching this is like, oh, great. Hell yeah. Love this. Lampkin dwells on love. He says it's interesting, perhaps a tactical choice, making Cylons capable of experiencing it, because it's not for the faint-hearted. She agrees. He says, maybe you should have been nicer to your mechanic. And that perhaps Cylon love and human love aren't the same. Maybe Cylon love is designed to hurt less. And he talks about his own love. A beautiful, serious woman who he was with for 10 years before it collapsed under its own weight. Lampkin explains that he thought if he could get over her, he could get over anything. But after clinging to a spinning, empty bed for months, he realized that if he needed so much strength, what was the point? I needed her.
So this had me intrigued, not only because, again, there's always the idea in your back of your head of like, is this made up?
Yeah.
But I guess it's odd. Every time I assume that someone's talking about their deceased loved one, I'm assuming they died in the attack on the colonies, because I would imagine that was the vast majority of time the case. But it sounds like Lampkin is referring to, from a timeline perspective, that he lost his wife before. the attack because
Right.
he talks about how it seems to be I listen, I don't know if he's like implying like flat out suicide or just like very rough depression, but like
Right.
he basically says that this person collapsed under their own weight. Doesn't really sound like, oh, she was, totally fine and then the Cylons happened to blow her up one day.
Yeah. But I think it's cool, like to like get into like, like other than, I mean, there's a few examples of this, of like people whose ghosts haunt Battlestar Galactica that didn't die in the genocide. Like
Mhm.
Zach Adama is obviously like sort of the big one.
Yep.
But like this idea that like, there was this enormous tragedy that happened. This is a big theme in, for a certain character on The Leftovers, of like
Yeah.
the sudden departure happened like the day after a character's mother died,
Mhm.
and like died in front of her, basically. But no one is there to help her through that grief because of a global catastrophe.
Right.
So I think like that's always an interesting premise to explore. It's beautifully explored on The Leftovers, and I think it's beautifully explored in this scene of Lampkin talking about love, whether or not it's real or not. I think like he's convincing because he's got the glasses trick. Sometimes they're on, sometimes they're off, and he does just have sort of like this like smooth, grizzled way of talking about it. And he, kind of touches Six's heart. She asks if
Mhm.
Gaius ever asks about her, and he said he says he misses you, he loves you, and he gave me his pen to prove it, which is not true. And
Nope.
Baltar's like, "Where's my pen?"
Yeah,
So
like,
he was
oh
freaking out about
no,
that.
did I lose it somewhere?
Yeah. It's a pen he uses at great risk to express his feelings, which he keeps hidden because he knows he won't get another. Because for Baltar, the pen has no meaning without Six. He'd give anything to be with you again. Um, and Lampkin says, "Do you understand what's coming for you? Your days are numbered. I can't help you. Even if they paid me 10 times what they're paying me now to do Baltar's trial, I won't be able to help you. You wouldn't even get a bad trial. So does your love hurt as bad as mine?" And she says, "It does." And Rosalind, watching all of this, is like, "Oh no, this is not what we wanted to happen." I
Yeah,
think
I
that
think
he just turned Caprica 6.
she says, "I feel like part of our world just fell down."
Yes.
And yeah, this is what happens when one of the pillars that you had to hold up your reality was in the form of this testimony of someone who can be easily swayed by matters of the heart. And it's just, oh man, so smooth. Again, I will invoke another fictional lawyer. This is giving me very much like Saul Goodman
Hmm.
vibes of like when Huel like pats down Chuck right in his big moment and plants stuff on people to like
Yeah.
make these big points at the end of the day. I mean, we'll find out later that partially it's to feed his own kleptomania, but
Yeah,
partially well
he's a
worth
klepto
too.
thing for sure. Yeah. Because also we get in the scene, Adam's like, one of my buttons is missing. It's because like somewhere along the way, little Romo Lemkin was just like, boop, give me a button.
Yeah, again, and it shows the cocksure attitude that he has walking through this, that he can like walk up to the most powerful man in essentially the entire fleet
Yeah.
and filch one of his buttons and be like, "Yeah, I could get shot in the head for this, but I probably won't."
Who cares? Who cares? Um, Lee is going to sit down with Lampkin. They're in the pilot's mess because they don't want to be bugged. And he says, "Why'd you take Baltar's pen after you told him to write?" And Lampkin says he's going to garner more sympathy once people learn he's been silenced. It's like, yo, okay, so like you're generating that though. And Lee says, my grandfather, like you lied to Baltar, you lied to Six, and my grandfather used to tell me to be good but not too good. And so he's like seeing like, is that what my grandfather taught you? And I said, yeah, he taught me that everybody has demons, and the
Hmm.
law is just a way of exercising them. That's how I have exercised the demons, and that is what the law does. And Lee says that his father, like, he defended the worst of the worst. He remembered reading about him and wondering why he put himself through all the abuse. Lee says the only thing Joseph Adama cared about was understanding why people do what they do. Why do we cheat friends, reward enemies, go to war, try to fix our shortcomings by building machines? Why do we forgive? Lampkin said he wanted to know why. So he did what Joseph did and spent his life with the fallen, the corrupt, the damaged. He points out that Lee was willing to break orders today. Lee says, I was just doing my job. And Lampkin says, so what are you doing getting up in my shit? Like, I'm doing my job too. And
Yeah,
then Lampkin is about to leave, and Lee asks, Was the story about the woman true? And I believe this is when he takes his glasses off and he says it was.
Yeah. So mind games on top of mind games here. I mean, this entire idea. And again, what I find so interesting is like, yes, we're getting more perspective into Joseph Adama, but are we? Because everyone has their own story to tell, and there's a very easy way for, even if for someone like Lee who knew his grandfather a lot better than we know him, like there's still a way that Lampkin can twist it because
Yeah.
he doesn't know what his grandfather was like at work. But specifically looking at this idea of the law as like a study of people, I find incredibly intriguing as a concept because on paper you'd be like, no, that's for sociology, that's for psychology. But I think there is something interesting about the behavioral aspects, right? Of like, if you set boundaries for someone, however nonsensical it might be, they might act in a certain way based on the fact that those boundaries exist, right?
Yeah.
Either they will feel cordoned off and feel like, oh, I don't want to do this because then I will be breaking the law and I will face punishment, or it might actually get them to do it more because it's proving something to themselves or to somebody else, or it's in defiance of what they feel like is a capital W wrong. And
Yeah.
so the more I chewed on it, the more maybe I, just like Lee Adama, am falling under Lampkin's spell here in this idea of the law being a study of people, and not only just the law followers or breakers, but also the lawmakers
Yeah.
too. And like when you create laws, listen, it's something that it's very prescient of like our laws sometimes created to push down certain communities, to prop up other communities. What does that say about us in terms of the way we otherize people who have the same organs as we do, and this capacity to put ourselves above others, no matter what that might take in terms of stratification. So,
Yeah.
we don't really focus too much on like what the law means as a study of behaviors and people. But even just stopping down for this brief second, I was drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Lampkin almost dies. He's going back to his quarters. They're checking his bag, his stuff. Like, hey,
He,
Kelly
he also
already
he
looked
also
through
like,
everything.
even with Mark Shepard's fantastic lilt, even he can't really show like, I've got to take a shit.
Yeah, yeah. I gotta take a doo doo. And he almost goes doo doo, but he gets almost gets blown up. There's a screw missing, and the screw
Oh,
missing
there's a screw
suggests
loose, all right.
a bomb under the keypad, and Lampkin gets tackled out of the way. He's alive, but he's been almost assassinated once again. In sick bay, Lee brings Lampkin his bag he's happy to have, and Lee opens it, and there's just like a ton of shit that he's Winona Rydered. He's like, "That's Rosalind's glasses." I was like, "Yeah, well, she looks less serious without them." Sirius catches on in the courtroom. "This is my dad's button," and Lampkin's like, "Yeah, yeah," and it's like,
That's the thing, is that like initially he's trying to sell his way out of it, of like, no, I'm using this as a test for them, or like this is a personal item that means something
yeah,
to this person. And like
yeah,
even with the pen with Baltar, then it's just like, no, this is Adama's loose button. He's like, yeah, listen, this is my own demon. I got to admit, this is listen, there are much worse ways I could handle my wife's death. If I filch a couple of pennies from people's pockets, not that much issues to him.
yeah. Because when he was a kid, he says, "My parents were killed for the cash they carried, which wasn't enough. Then I went and lived with my
So
uncle."
I became Batman.
He's sort of Battlestar Batman, Romo Lampkin.
Almost the opposite, in that he's like kind of a petty criminal. Like this would be, much like that. Was it
I
Red
mean, this
Sun?
is
Which,
really Daredevil, right? Daredevil's parents are dead, and
yeah,
Daredevil becomes a lawyer, and
my
like he has
father
like a
tried to.
secret, a
He was asked to
secret like
fix a boxing match.
vigilante thing. It's just that Romo Lampkin's secret vigilante thing, instead of fighting crime, is just like stealing shit.
Exactly. Like this is almost the Red Sun for Superman equivalent of like, what if Daredevil turned to the dark side?
Yeah, yeah. Um, so Lee tellingly is like, "So what have you taken from me?" And Lampkin, I love the honesty in this moment. I was thinking about taking the photo of Starbuck, but you've had enough taken from you already. Um, I
Whew.
think through Lee and his father in this episode, while you're right, we don't get the Starbuck funeral. I really do think that you see so much of the pain of losing Kara in these characters, even when it's quiet, even when it's not what
Mhm.
they're talking about, even when it's just like Lee is standing vigil as the security guy. Lee is missing bombs underneath things. something as simple as Lee and Bill having to like hear Lampkin talk about love, to have a total outsider, somebody who has never been on the show before, who is just like bold and brash, who if those terms remind you of someone, perhaps suddenly like that energy that Kara possessed is now being possessed by this totally random guy who, not unlike Kara might, if someone else was dead and she was the one who was still alive, she might be saying some of this same shit that Roma Lampkin ends up saying. And he says, "I almost took the picture. You've had enough taken from you already." Um,
Yeah, and I think it's also something as well, speaking to the fact that when you have this sort of like outsidery perspective, right? I mean, this is why therapy works in so many ways for so many people, is that sometimes you just need someone who exists. I can't even say as an objective viewpoint because none of us are truly objective, but like someone who
yeah.
does not have firsthand experience into the matters and people of your life. You just need their opinions on things. And so to kind of have this person come in as this third party omniscient force and be like, yeah, I'm feeling that you're really in your feels right now. It's something that I think is a stark reminder to Lee as to what he's feeling, and also as a good reminder to him of like, oh yeah, you're not masking this thing nearly as much as you thought you were. And given
Yep.
he kind of already realized that before when he accidentally called a racetrack Starbuck,
Yeah.
but this is really just a confirmation of like, yeah, you still got a lot of stuff you're working on at the moment, let alone having to worry for my well-being.
Um, Lee pulls out. Lee says like he gets the pen that was given to Caprica 6. So he has that. Give it back to my client. Lee says, "I'm gonna give Rosalind her glasses back too." And as he's looking in, he sees a detonator.
Yeah. And so Lampkin is gonna say like, oh yeah, I probably should have mentioned that. Yeah, I was searching your boy Kelly. Remember him? He just happened to conspicuously show up after eons and eons away. Yeah, he had this on him. Is this anything?
Yeah. So it's Kelly. And Kelly, to his credit, when he's confronted by Lee, he's like, "Yeah, it was totally me. And you should probably just throw me in prison because I'll never stop.
Yeah,
I'll
I'll do it again
never
and
stop."
again and again.
Yeah. Like I'll just keep going. It's like, all right, man, like if you're really just trying to bury yourself in LVPs, like you could do that. That's totally fine.
Yeah, because also
Um,
now you're alerting to the fact that you are, a person of interest. So even if you don't do something, you're going to become number one on the call sheet of suspects.
yeah. He says like the motive was he's the guy who clears the pilots for liftoff, for launch. And so I'm sick of clearing every pilot to die. I got tired of living with that. And so like this is another way in which it's reflecting like Starbuck's death, like losing Starbuck, like losing your like, this is like when you hear about like actors who like stars who die really young, like
Mhm.
Heath Ledger, James Dean. Like these are like people who like these people were like electric, who were like electric in their fields, so talented, had so much ahead of them. River Phoenix, these Starbuck is like that for pilots. And when like we're already in such a grim situation and Starbuck dies and you, Lee, you can't do your job either, like we're in a horrible position. So a lot of people, I think, are like breaking in weird ways. And Kelly's not really a character that we've invested any true time in at all. But I think it's helpful to have like somebody who is in that room, who
Mm.
has been involved in decision making surrounding the fleet and surrounding combat and military operations, to have that reflected on a guy like, what's the fucking point anymore, right? Like she's
Ah.
gone, and like I'm just gonna, every pilot that I'm gonna clear from now on, they're just gonna die anyway.
See, that's interesting because I don't know. I guess maybe that wasn't my take on it. I thought it was more so like his, grudge against Baltar of
Yeah,
like all these people, all these honorable good people go off to their deaths, and this guy gets to sit
and he gets to live.
yeah, nice and cushy in, yes, not a padded cell, but like he gets to sit and not pay for his crimes while everyone else, innocent people, quote unquote, die every day. That
Yeah.
was more so the perspective I took, but I could also see that point as yet another way to kind of funnel Starbucks loss through one of these more rank and file members of the crew.
We really get into it with the Adamas. because Kelly's been arrested, because they've solved the crime, Lee is no longer needed on security detail, and you could be CAG again. And Lee says, well, I think I'd rather do lawyer shit for a little while. Is that cool? And I was like, that is wildly uncool. And they get into a big spat about like, why did you give me the stuff a few episodes ago if you didn't want me to do law stuff? He says that was maybe a mistake. Like maybe I shouldn't have done that. You're a pilot. You're a pilot. Report for duty. Go be a pilot. And Lee says, "Is that an order?" And Adama says, like, it's not worth giving you orders. And so, like, for like the 11th time, Adama is like basically like fired Lee.
Yeah, so
We've done this before.
We've done this before, and it's, I don't know, maybe it's just the Lee stand in me. This is a bad look on William Adama for him to
Sure.
like brazenly admit to his son, like, yeah, it was wrong to let you open up your worldview and allow yourself to like explore other options. And look, Lee definitely takes some pot shots here. He says, and with Zach gone and Kara gone, you need someone to carry the flag, isn't it? Basically being like, I'm the only one you have left to continue on the Adama legacy. But Bill Adama is not making the best case for himself when basically he's like, you're my son and you're not going to do the thing that I told you to, that I wanted you to do 3 episodes ago, essentially. Like, I wanted you to study the law, but not like this.
Yeah. Not
When
like
like,
this.
but like that's the quality of, yes, your son is considerably outside of college age, but like, I don't know, you need him to explore
Yeah.
other perspectives because if anything, that's going to allow him to become a better leader. There's certainly, as much as Bill Adama was telling Lee, you're a soldier, like, I think he looks upon him as a leader, hell, the former commander of the Pegasus. And I think to be a good leader requires you to become more worldly and be able to take in the opinions of others and see things from other people's perspectives or sunglasses. And so I don't know. It seems to me an ability for Lee to be able to understand a bit more about how the world works and who he is. But clearly, I think from Bill's perspective, there's a lot going on. There is his own feelings about his father and perhaps the law. There is this idea of like, you could be enabling Gaius Baltar not getting punished for all the
Yeah.
stuff that he did. And there's also probably a part of him that is kind of proving Lee's point of like, I've already lost 2 children. I can't lose another right now, to quote the other side.
Yep. Yep. So Hilo's gonna stay on his CAG, and Hilo probably is like, okay, until you give me another job. But sure, yes, I'll do that. Lee is gonna go to the memorial wall, and finally he gets to pin Starbucks photo next to Kat. And Sam comes in. He's on crutches. And the broken leg had given him an excuse not to come to the memorial wall. Sooner or later, you run out of excuses.
And he's wearing like some sort of like zip up cast. Like it looks like it's in some sort of odd plastic bag you get at like J.C. Penney.
Maybe they don't have like cast stuff in the Battlestar. I don't know what that is. Cast stuff.
Yeah, I mean they are, plaster, I guess. No, it might be plaster, like something like that. Yeah, I mean, listen, they're in wartime. Supplies are few
Blaster.
and far between. That maybe it's just
Mike,
something
have you
that
ever
Doc Ock
broken
thinks.
anything?
I broke my wrist when I was 14 years old.
How long did
And
you have a cast on for?
probably about a month.
Yeah,
What about you?
I've never broken anything.
Wow, this is
Not
really
yet. Not
looking
yet.
at so youthful. You've never broken a bone. Your face is
No.
clean shaven. You're
I've had
becoming a
other
sweet summer
maladies.
child.
I've had other maladies. No brokes. No breaks.
I'm sure there are times when you felt like you have broken one of your extremities.
Yeah,
Considering
with my
the
frickin' gout for
exactly.
sure, 100%. Feels like broken glass for sure. Lee and Sam have like a final goodbye. Sam says, "I'll see you around," and he touches the picture of Starbuck. And like, yeah, like as much as you are kind of neutral on Sam Anders, his story is not over, so we'll see him around for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that it's not just him mourning Starbuck. Like, as much as I talked about how absolutely blasé this
Yeah.
character is, a piece of unbuttered white toast. I don't want him to
You've kind of
necessarily.
come around on Hilo, yeah?
I've come around to Hilo because Hilo has been given stuff to
Right,
do.
right.
That's my thing, is that Anders was introduced rather unceremoniously. Honestly, the most interesting thing about the character was the initial concept, which was like, here's this essentially captain of sports who
Yeah.
is tasked with leading, the remnants
Daniel
of
DiLorenzo.
exactly with
Yeah.
the having to face the prospect of like the remnants of humanity surviving the Cylon takeover of his home planet.
Yeah.
And then it just became sort of like generic Starbuck love interest slash fourth point in the love quadrangle. I would like to find out more about him, to
Yeah.
be completely honest. That doesn't have Starbuck included in the sentence inevitably when describing him.
Yeah, I think he's not a cover guy, right? Like he's not on the Blu-ray unless there's someone really hidden on there. Um,
Just like, yeah, blink and you miss it. Oh, there's Anders actually in the corner peeking
but
through.
I suspect that if you don't come around on him the way that you totally came around on Hilo, I think that Sam will improve for you at the very least.
Okay.
We'll get into all of that. The episode ends with Baltar in his prison, and he gets an envelope. The pen is inside. There is a note as well, and this time Roma Lampkin, who has quoted two authors previously, seems to be quoting himself. He says, "There is no great ally, no force more powerful, no enemy more resolved than a son who chooses to step from his father's shadow." That's the quote that we leave the episode on. Mike Bloom, your interpretation.
I mean, what it's implying is sort of the long con of it, right? Of like, I got him. You know, if when Lee goes, so goes the rest of the fleet. You know, if the CAG is willing to turn on his own father, what does that say about this so-called defense, this so-called tribunal? So
Like it was
it's
sort of like a mock trial, right? Like
yeah,
if I could turn this man's heart to my side and to see that like justice is not being meted out, that could be good for us.
exactly. Like I led a horse to water and I made him drink. So I think we're looking pretty good going into the finale, which I imagine is going to be chief tierly the trial of Gaius Baltar.
Before we get to the finale, Mike, we've got to give out some MVPs and LVPs and other such things for this episode of BSG. Top five, bottom five. I've got three MVPs. You've got two. You've got three LVPs. I've got two. My MVPs are very easy. I'm giving them all to Romo Lampkin. I'm thrilled to have him here. And I just want to make sure he's like solidly on the board.
Yeah, that very much makes sense. I will give one of my points to Lampkin as well. I mean, I think maybe besides Dean Stockwell, maybe the most like electric debut performance on Battlestar Galactica. Again, the way he just comes in and not only commands the room, but I would say even above Dean Stockwell, also commands everybody else. Like, yes,
Yeah.
it's fun when he ends up effing with Tyrell's mind as to like, well, I haven't seen you at the Cylon meetings only for him to be a Cylon, but then like he immediately gets caught for it. Lampkin is kind of the cat who ate the canary and like
Yeah.
is able to really get his prey and relish in it. And so it's a pretty damn powerful way to set up this character that I would imagine might become in a way our primary antagonist of the finale. And so
Um,
I will also give one ceremonial MVP point to Leodama
Of
because
course,
he
when your guy is doing well, you want to represent him.
I mean, and also he made a decision that he felt was right for him. You know, he decided at least at the end of this episode, no, maybe he'll come sort of hat in hand next time and be like, Dad, I was wrong. I shouldn't have joined up with Lampkin. But like in this moment, he's listening to his heart. He's hearing what this guy has to say. He's trying to figure everything out in the midst of a very emotionally turbulent situation. And I want to give him some kudos for that.
LVPs. I already mentioned I'll give one to Alan Hughes for dying, so I'm doing that, and then I'll give my other one to Kelly for being a dick.
Yeah, I gave two to Kelly, one for trying to blow up like Boomer and Lampkin at least, which should also be mentioned that like, yeah, Boomer would have died and Kelly didn't necessarily seem to care. And then also one for the fact that he got caught so easily. You know, like
Yeah,
if you're gonna be a terrorist, at least be one that could squirrel yourself away in your spire hole and not
I think that's
necessarily get
fair.
caught flat-footed. And I
Yeah.
will give my final LVP to Callie. And we'll get into this in the deleted scenes, but just a
Why don't we get
bad,
into it now? Can you
yeah.
can you go into the Callie deleted scene from this episode?
Yeah, because we do leave things at an odd point. Yes, this episode isn't about Athena, nor is it about Callie, but like we leave things at an odd place with the two of them, right? Where it's like Callie essentially saying, "Yeah, well, if if you would have died, what would have mattered?" And so as Callie's fixing a Viper, Athena is going to kind of accost her and be like, "You realize I would have died if that bomb went off. Why do you think I would have planted it?" And then she ends up handing a gun to Callie, forcing her to point it at her and be like, yeah, you want to kill me? You want to just rinse repeat as you did with the other Boomer? And basically, Callie is going to, of course, disengage, put the gun down, and she tells Callie, "You can hate me, but you should stay quiet about it. Because the second that I find out about it, I will kill you."
Yeah, hell yeah, Athena.
I mean, listen, you got to assert yourself. Clearly, this woman thinks that she has dominion over you because she killed one of your many duplicates, but you are not Boomer. You have proved that many, many times, and this is just fortifying the point.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's fair. Give Callie a demerit for being mean to Athena, who is still in pole position as our MVP of season 3. It's looking
And
like
also
right now.
incorrect as well. Her supposition is wrong. It is
Yeah,
not Athena who has anything to do with this.
yeah. Athena did nothing wrong. Stay away from Athena. She's got 8 MVP points heading into the finale. Bill Adama's got 7. We'll see how that all shakes out.
Ooh.
Um, the Cylons versus the Fleet, Mike Bloom. Where do we go with that this week?
Ooh. I mean, if Gaius Baltar is being enabled, does that help the Cylons? Is the question. Like, I would
Interesting.
say we are either in NA territory once more, or it's the Cylons that are winning. Those are the two I'm between.
Where so talk me through. NA is obvious, right? Where
Yes.
like this is kind of just a wash. This is a more fleet centered episode. The Cylons don't really have a huge role in it, but what are the ramifications, the ramifications, if you will, of things seeming like maybe Baltar has some support here going into the trial?
Exactly. He has some support, as Romo talks about the fact that, one of the higher ups in the fleet is defecting from his father, who serves on the tribunal. The fact that the star witness, who is a Cylon, is basically saying, like, oh, I love this guy again. I'm not going to testify against him. It's a lot leaning in his corner. And, ordinarily I would assign NA. The only thing that's given me pause is what we did last week, right? Where it's like, there were no Cylons to be found, but a major part of the fleet just ended up getting wiped off the board, and that's nothing but good for the Cylons. There is no blood to be, scattered this episode, but it
Yeah.
does feel like things are considerably moved in a good direction for like the Cylon side of things from a legal perspective. It's still nebulous, so I'm still happy going NA, but that's why I'm also kind of tilting somewhat towards Cylon as well.
I think let's go NA for now, and we can revise later on if we think that this ends up being like this was a Cylon win.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, especially in retrospect. Like, if it turns out that, who knows, if it turns out that Lampkin is a Cylon, then it's like, oh, okay, then now absolutely it was a Cylon win. But
All right.
because he's
So
so murky right now, purposely so, we're not entirely sure.
overall totals in this battle of the fleet versus the Cylons. This is where we stand. 20 victories for the fleet, 13 victories for the Cylons. There have been 10 Colonel ties, and this season alone, the newly introduced non-applicable, there have been 6. So that's in the back of the pack
Plurality.
for the overalls. For season 3's totals right now, the fleet has 5 victories. The Cylons have 4. There have been 3 Colonel ties. There have been 6 non-applicables. The non-applicables have it heading into the finale, Mike Bloom.
Oh my god. I mean, is this not wholly appropriate though? Like, in a war, who truly wins?
Yeah.
Everyone has times where they win, sometimes where they lose, or sometimes, and actually I think this is actually very appropriate for season 3 as well, considering that since we've left New Caprica, and especially since the whole Eye of Jupiter thing, we have not seen hair nor hide of Cylons outside of Caprica 6. And so it's been really tough to be like, well, the Cylons definitely won this week when they've just been basically in absentia for the better part of 2 months.
How are you feeling about that going into the finale?
I don't love it.
In Lost season 3, like we were like in with the others, and like we had that here sort of mid-season with Baltar being in with the Cylons. Since then, and since we boxed Deanna, we've lost that perspective.
Yeah, but it is sort of like we did have time on the Cylon ship once we left New Caprica, and that wasn't good. So it's a little bit of like, I want more Cylon stuff, but I want more actually structurally sound Cylon stuff. Like, I even talked about that after the Eye of Jupiter stuff. Once Caprica 6 and Athena came over, I was sort of like, I don't really care about anybody on
Yeah,
the Cylon ship
yeah.
anymore. So it's tough to fill this out with B plots if they're not necessarily dealing with characters that I necessarily enjoy, with plots I don't necessarily enjoy. So I guess it's sort of like be careful what you wish for. But
Sure.
at this point, assuming that it would be well written, I do miss the ability to find out what's going on with all the Cylons.
We will not go through the rest of the show without checking in on the Cylons, is the good news. But it has been a stretch, and I think that 6 NA is very telling.
Hmm.
And I think if that had some sort of impact on like how you're feeling about this season, I think that it's an interesting barometer for sure. However, we rate the episodes too at this point on a scale from 0 to 4.2. We encourage all of you to send in your scores down the hatch, rhap@gmail.com. You can also hit us up in the formerly known as Post Show Recaps Discord, where if you want to write into down the hatch, rhap@gmail.com, let me know. Heading into the finale, there's a bunch of people waiting to get in. I tried to do this in a shot. We will let you in. We will send you an email back with sign up info if you want to be talking about what goes down in the finale with the rest of the Down the Hatch faithful. All of that being said, Mike,
No traitors among us.
no traitors among us. All of that being said, well, you never know. All of that being said, Mike, like I said before, I think that we are in like that really juicy stretch. I know more than you do, of course. So for me, I'm not expecting that this is like a lights out episode for you. For me, I love this episode. And as a
Mhm.
follow up to the Starbucks stuff, having like a totally different character kind of carry Starbucks energy while everybody else is trying to sort of just like, especially the lads, right? The boys would rather like get into like irreparable fights with each other than go to therapy kind of deal.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like to have this guy, this tough guy, this random ass new guy somehow also be like a sensitive guy and like sort of willing to like challenge you brusquely on how you're actually feeling, like this person who's a thief showing up here and kind of stealing the show. I think is really, really magnificent. Like we said, Brother Cavill, I think it's a good comp. Like he shows up right before the end of season 2, like right as season 2 is ending. But
Mhm.
he has like the extraordinary scene with Chief. It's like a couple of
Yeah.
scenes with Chief. This is the Roma Lampkin episode. And
Mhm.
so I think if you're not hot on Roma Lampkin, you probably don't like this one that much. I love the character. I think he's great. I think Mark Shepard brings such a good energy to the show. Clean 4.2 for me.
I gave it a flat 4 at this moment with the right reserve to change the score upon seeing the finale, because it does seem, to your point, that part of your enjoyment was at least buoyed by the fact that you know what's coming. I obviously do not. But I really enjoyed this episode as, again, in my opinion, a long overdue check-in on the ever eternal moral struggle that Leodama has been going through and the choices that he makes. I think where he gets led to makes a lot of sense. I like chewing over some of the stuff that Lampkin is shoveling us, even if it might be filled with bullshit. And
Yeah,
I think it is a really fun way to set up what's going on in this finale and setting up some personal stakes as well as legal stakes in the trial that is to come. I think the only thing that takes away from it for me is, again, feeling like while the Starbuck element is there, it's maybe a little more paltry than I would have liked.
sure.
But really, that's the only mark against it. Not Mark Shepard, who I think does an incredible job in this episode. So, to your point, I think the hot streak continues. We are finally in the high temperatures right now. We're luxuriating in those spring temps after being quite cold for the previous couple of months. And I think it sets it up some very, very intriguing prospects as to what's to come in the two-part finale.
All right, before we frack off, we've got some of the predictions that you have made along the way. Let's check in on them. Mike, a few episodes ago, we had you lock in your Cylon picks. Your Cylon picks were Chief, Gata, Duala, Tori, and someone we have not yet met.
Which could be
Um,
Lampkin. We don't know.
how are you feeling about those picks right now? Any adjustments, anything?
I mean, no, I'm gonna choose to keep my generic fifth category a generic fifth category. I'm going to try to give myself some grace here and
Okay.
not Grace Park, and try to cast a wide net
Season
there.
Cylon.
I might, yeah, you know what? Let's do it. Why the hell not? I'm swapping out Tori for Lampkin.
Okay. Tori is out. Lampkin is in.
I think it would make more sense that like the Cylons would send a Cylon to help out the biggest Cylon sympathizer in the fleet. No?
Yep. Yep. Makes sense to me if they were able to do that.
Big if. Big if.
Big if. Huge if true. Okay, revised Cylon picks. Chief, Gata, Duala, Lampkin, and someone we have not yet met. Those are Mike's Cylon picks heading into the finale. Heading into the finale, Mike, you have bet that it would take 13 episodes for Adama and Roslin to frack. This was on the other side of the Lee and Kara frackometer. 3 episodes down. Are they going to frack in the finale, Mike?
They could be. Listen, trials can make all of us quite testy, quite hot under the collar. Sometimes that collar needs to be promptly unbuttoned. And hell, if Rosalind feels like the world's falling apart, back in remember those flashbacks from the boxing episode when they were
Yes.
clearly doing a bit of a roll in the hay. Maybe they're like, "F the world, let's get high," and
Yeah.
truly knock boots here.
The person who was one half of the originators of the frackometer, Kara Thrace. Starbuck is dead, but Katie Sackhoff will be seen on the show again, was a prediction you made last week. We did not see her this week. In fact, I don't know how closely you pay attention to the credits. She's not in the credits anymore.
Wow.
Katie Sackhoff is off.
Katie
will we
Sackhoff.
will we see her Sackhoff? Will we see her in the finale?
Unless there was what you so cheekily referenced last week, like a true burning of the bridge. I don't know if we'll see her in the finale. I think we will see her in the final season, at
Okay.
least.
Yep.
Barring any sort of thing where she just AAA absolutely torched any relationship that she had with production. And if she did, I feel like I would have known about it just through osmosis,
Yep.
through being a pop culture devotee. So I
Sure.
feel like Starbucks going to show up at some point down the line.
Okay, fracks. The frack counter. There are 15 fracks in this episode. 4 from Lee, 3 from Chief, 2 from Kelly, only 2 from Romo Lampkin. He doesn't need to curse
He
to.
doesn't need to. I mean, some people say that, I know that some say, hey, the more you curse, the more smart you sound, but Lampkin is quite the opposite. He needs to
The
sound
more you curse.
as sophisticated as possible, and so he decides to remain PG-13.
Uh,
2
a
fracks.
frack, a frack from Sam, Racetrack, Adama, and Fergursky. It brings our season 3 frack count to 155. Starbuck, always the clubhouse leader on fracks, but she's not here anymore. And Lee Adama just got 4 fracks to get close to catching up. Starbuck has 27 fracks in season 3. Lee Adama has 25. Chief
Oh.
not terribly far behind with 22.
All right, but I think in the overall count, right, Lee has to be considerably cursing
Yes, he needs to
storm.
just be so filthy for the rest of the show because
He's
overall,
37 behind Starbuck right now.
Starbuck with 81, Lee with 44, Chief with 31. These are the top frackers on the board. Kat and Ty tied for 4th with 23 fracks apiece.
Wow,
So,
2 out of the top 5 are currently dead characters.
yeah. So how about that? And Hilo just behind them with 22 fracks. And Sam Anders right behind Hilo.
I mean,
fracks.
he probably yelled a lot also in the med bay as he was getting his broken leg treated.
Kind of surprising that Gaius Baltar has only said frack 12 times across Battlestar Galactica.
Because he's just been too scared. I think sometimes swearing is more so done out of anger. He doesn't seem to be the type of guy who's like, oh, frack, oh no, oh, frack. He more so does it out of pure passion.
Yeah. I'm trying to see who is the most surprising person who has been on the show quite a bit and has only said frack once. Doc Cottle has only said frack 1 time.
He's a professional.
Yeah, but he also is the surliest mofo. You would imagine that he was like, get the frack off me. I'm operating. I'm surprised we haven't gotten that. No Cylon model rankings adjusting in this episode, I assume.
Yeah, no. We see 2 technically, but no real movement in everything.
Okay, Mike. Next week. Bum 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 bum. I'll see you at the crossroads. Season 3, episode 19 and 20. Crossroads, part 1 and 2. The season 3 finale. Give me your predictions, Mike. What's going to happen in the finale of season 3 of Battlestar Galactica?
Let's give the final 5 things. We'll see the finale 5 in Battlestar Galactica season 3 finale. Okay, I will say that the Adamas will reconcile. We will have a moment between father and son where one will tell the other one, I was wrong, and the 2 will be on relatively good standings moving into season 4. I think that Gaius Baltar will be found guilty, but he will escape custody somehow. I think the Cylons will find a way to probably bust him out, but I don't know if they'll go the full way. Clearly the tease right now is oh, he might be exonerated. I don't know if he will be, but I think there's a way where he still is going to almost like Siler in Heroes, right? Like be
Yeah.
able to get away with murder and slip into the night. That said, number 3, I think we will see a return of the Cylons. As much as I was sort of maligning the fact that we have yet to see hair nor hide of them, I think the fact that the episode is called Crossroads makes me feel like we are going to get a cross between them at some point. Let's see. Let's do another one. Number 4, I think we will get at least one other Cylon identity outed. I
Okay.
think we'll go into season 4 with a final 4, not a final 5. And number 5, I think we are getting another time jump,
Okay.
a la season 2 into season 3. I don't know if it will be as considerable, but I could see a plot motion where something happens, either like only part of the fleet escapes from a Cylon attack, or something where we're not going to see a considerable amount of people in season 4. I'm not sure what the situation was like behind the scenes. I'm sure we'll get into whether or not they knew that this was a 4-season plan or whether this was something that was sprung onto them.
Yep.
It could be a case that if the ratings were low and the budget was thinning out, some of the first things to go are the rank and file people that are around you. And so I could expect a major event where some of the cast is thinned either through a time jump or some catastrophic event that leaves the fleet more scattered than ever.
Okay, Mike, I don't usually do this, but I would like to tease the finale in a cryptic way for you.
Okay.
I'm going to say 4 words, and the 4 words will make sense after we watch the finale.
Oh, okay.
But I think they won't make any sense right now.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
You ready?
Yeah.
Woodstock, improvisation, clothesline, saga.
I feel like you set off a sleeper agent. Like someone's going to come bursting through my door Winter Soldier style and start strangling me.
You never know. You never know. So again, that's Woodstock, improvisation, clothesline, saga.
Okay. See, the
Bucky
ending with
Barnes, activate.
yeah, ending with Saga makes me feel like it's all wrapped up into one sentence, but I would like it if it was 4 separate stuff just because improvisation, maybe it's
All
something
right,
to
let me
do.
do another one. You ready?
Yeah.
Bone, thugs,
Thugs.
and harmony.
All right, Anne's going to be lifting a lot of weight in this 2-hour
Four
finale.
four different words. So that's my tease heading into the finale. Content warning. We'll be dealing with some issues surrounding cancer in the finale. So if that is triggering for you, as it has been a recurring story on Battlestar Galactica, there are some developments on that front that we will discuss. So that's it. That's the podcast this week. I want to give a big shout out to the team behind the curtain, Ben and Brendan and Operation Mattingly, for making this podcast possible, shipping it through the pneumatic tubes into your ears. The great Jessica Sterling editing the podcast as well. Shouts to Alex G, the man who has written the great theme song for Down the Hatch here. All of you who write in, dear hatchlings, you write into downthehatch, RHAP@gmail.com, or you're in that aforementioned Discord. If you want to be in that Discord, I have seen your requests. If they have gone unanswered, I will answer them soon. And now would be the time to make the request as well. If you have yet to do so, I will be letting people in just a couple of days to discuss the season 3 finale of Battlestar Galactica, which will be the final episode of Down the Hatch for a little bit before we go on an extended hiatus. We will have a lot to talk about. I think it's going to be a really fun episode of the podcast. Mike Bloom, who you can talk to on the internet at a Mike Bloom type. He's got so much going on.
Yeah, I mean, I'll plug just a couple of things. Of course, The Last of Us I know we're coming to you a bit late this week with DTH, so we're only a couple days away, actually, not too long to wait for the season 2 premiere of The Last of Us. I'll be after the episode every Sunday night with Grace Leader breaking that down, starting this Sunday with the premiere. Very excited for that. I was on Robin and Kivanita podcast this week, roasting people's pets.
Were you roasting Romo Lampkin's cat?
Yeah, I mean, listen, that little thing, you could say that maybe if it had been inside of the Raptor, it would have been worth the cost of lives. But
the cat has a name. The cat's name is Lance. Lance is the name of the cat.
I mean, it does live strong, so I think that makes a lot of sense.
And the cat's name in real life is Jerry.
That's pretty ironic, right? Is the mouse
Jerry's
named
a great
Tom?
name for a cat.
So you can check that out. I'm doing a bunch of other random stuff. If you're a fan of The Pit, I'll be doing a podcast this weekend about season 1 of The Pit.
I'm so behind. I have to catch up.
Well, you should and also check out my interview with breakout star of the season, Taylor Dearden, as well,
Nice.
Dr. Mel. It was a very fun time. So I'm doing a bunch of stuff out there at a Mike Bloom type.
Amazing. I'm at Round Howard, wherever you can find me on the internet. We will be back in just a few days, closing out BSG Season 3 here on DTH. Until then, frack off or sack off. Later. Bye.